I am Liz Donatelli. Welcome to Reader Seeks Romance, the #1 romance novel talk show on YouTube. I recently sat down with Sajni Patel to discuss her interracial second chance romance, First Love Take Two. Sajni also chatted about touch aversion anxiety disorder, meddling aunties, and the Marvel comic book character's love story she wants to write. Enjoy, and be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Hi, Sajni. Welcome to Reader Seeks Romance.
Hi, thank you so much for having me today.
It is a pleasure. Congratulations on First Love Take Two, your second chance romance.
Thank you.
Do you get a little bit nervous with the release of a new book because there's that personal piece of you that's going out there for strangers to see?
Yes, definitely. This is my fourth release, including an anthology. So it is a little bit easier. I'm not as stressed and going, driving myself up the wall, but it's always nervous. I'm always nervous because it is a piece of me, and I want to make sure that readers, love my work, or at least like it, and just kind of relate to it. Because it is so personal, but the reaction to it can be so subjective, and I have to remember not to take it personally. But of course, I feel very personal about my work.
Yeah, that drives me crazy when people say don't take something personally, especially when it's a part of your creative or intellectual property. It's like, well, how can you not separate yourself from your baby, your creation?
First Love Take Two is a rom-com. It is a second chance romance, but also close proximity, as the title, may let off. It's a story about Preeti Patel. She is a medical resident and coming up on her last months of residency. She's struggling to find work. And now she's in a situation where she needs a place to stay because her roommate is coming back married, and, three makes for an awkward crowd. So her best friend actually has a place for her to use for a couple of months. The thing is that someone else had already asked about this place for a few weeks, who happens to be Daniel Thompson, Preeti's ex. And so we see a lot of them trying to communicate, but kind of fighting that communication, as things tend to be. And Preeti is going through a lot of things with mental health as it is. And Daniel's also going through his own things, but they broke up about 6 years ago, and she never told him why. So now is her chance to kind of woman up and try to take that second chance, if that second chance is there.
You explore how closely Asian Indian culture is intertwined with religion. So this means that interracial dating is not ideal, and Preeti is Indian and Daniel is Black. In reality, a couple overcoming this type of barrier is an enormous challenge. Can you describe the experience of bringing Preeti and Daniel back together in love on the page?
So when they're back together, this time it's very public, and there is no room for error. They have to come to appreciate what mistakes they made in the past and overcome those mistakes. It's part of their evolution as people in the book. You don't want characters who are just still in the same state they were, because they broke up 6 years ago. So it's time for them to both evolve. And on the page, I wanted to bring out some of the things in this particular community. I don't want anyone to think that this is the say-all for all Indian communities or all approach toward interracial couples. There's lots of support out there. But in this book, for this story, they are coming across some racial tension. It's not immediately with her, but it is around her, and she has to face that, but also be part of her mental health to be able to stand up for herself, and not just toward the racism, but for every part of her life. That's just the person that she is. And that's one of the things that she has to learn. And with Daniel, his family is going through some things that is not particularly just about race when it comes to accepting or not accepting Preeti, but other parts of the social economic world that he's from. Mm-hmm. So it was just trying to bring everything together, and also trying to be very mindful and not offensive. I was trying to avoid stereotypes as much as possible, but there are some things that are very typical that I've seen and that I've experienced. And a lot of this is from personal experience. So that's what I wanted to bring onto the page as well.
Okay. So then you mentioned personal experience, and that kind of ties into my follow-up question, which is, have you ever known a real life Preeti and Daniel? Um, and did they find a happy ending?
So I base Preeti a lot on myself, especially with her mental health and the things that she's going through, and trying to stand up for herself in a society, community, and family where she was taught to kind of keep her opinions to herself and respect her elders. And with Daniel, there was no actual Daniel in my life. There were plenty of men. I don't want to say plenty of men, like there's so many of them, but there were a few who I took those experiences and put them into Daniel, as well as adding a lot more to him, because of course he's a fictional character. But I've noticed from my own experiences of having dated Black men that these issues are very real and they're very in your face. And it doesn't even have to come from people you know. I was getting a lot of this, we were both getting a lot of this criticism from people, from the strangers just passing us on the streets. And it was very, I would say, a bit traumatic. And those things that we have to approach, especially in this world today.
Preeti does live with anxiety, and specifically she has a fear of being touched, or touch aversion. What led to your decision to explore that particular mental health issue?
So I actually have touch aversion, and I know there are different kinds. There's kinds that stem from trauma. There's kinds that actually feel physically painful, and a couple of other kinds. And some of them can be treated through therapy and maybe medication. The kind that I have, which is the kind that Preeti has, is just more of a response that doesn't necessarily have to do with trauma and is not actually physical. It's more of a mental thing. So perhaps it can be alleviated a little bit with some mental coaching, although it is very difficult. And the thing about this touch aversion is that she has to feel very connected and comfortable with the person in order for them to touch them, in order for them to touch her. And for both of us, I'm going to go ahead and say we don't respond well to hugs, especially from strangers. We don't respond well to handshakes. I actually have trained so many people in my life to not touch me at all. Like, give me an elbow bump if you must touch me in greeting. Don't touch my hands. Don't hug me without consent, and don't get too close to me. So it is something that keeps people at bay when you're around people who are very touchy-feely. And I always tell people, because I feel like it is offensive to them. People have told me that they were offended by it, and I don't understand why. It's my body. But
Right.
I let them know that, it has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
It's everything to do with me. And I just, please ask for consent before touching me.
Menacing aunties. They are quickly becoming the modern day villains of romance novels. Particularly, I've noticed in romance novels featuring Asian protagonists. Are the aunties in your life that fierce and gossipy?
Oh my gosh. There's so many aunties in my life. They're part of the community. Auntie is really anyone that's older than you, but not related. So they can be friends of my parents or in that generation, or even older than them. But I'm always going to be surrounded by aunties because they're people out there in the wild. I have had my fair share of very gossiping aunties. I've had my fair share of very judgmental aunties. I just don't know where this all came from or why it's still socially acceptable. But I've noticed I'm very happy with, especially the younger generation, learning to stand up to them and letting them know that it's toxic or uncalled for. Because we also come from a community culture where we have elder respect. And so speaking up to your elders is quite offensive. And it's not just a reflection of you, it's a reflection of your entire family, particularly your parents. So you don't want to bring shame to your parents or have them under fire. But these are also issues that should be addressed.
First Love, Take Two. There are reader questions. Now, can I assume that you helped craft those reader questions, or was that something the publisher put together?
Those are all questions that I came up with.
Okay, well, I would like to pose one of those questions to you. There's an ensemble of colorful, passionate characters in the story. Who is your favorite character and why?
The character that I really liked, there were a couple. I really adore Daniel's grandparents. and they're based loosely off of people that I know, and they're just so loving and warm and very what I call Southern, that Southern hospitality, the thing that you kind of expect when you meet people from the South. And they are very close to Daniel and Preeti and just all their grandkids. And then Brandy, Daniel's sister, is someone else that I really enjoyed writing. And I will say that I based her a little bit off of Gabrielle Union's character in Being Mary Jane, which was a BET show. I think it ended a while back. I enjoy everything that Gabrielle Union is in, and I particularly related to that show. And so I just love the sass of that character. And so I kind of incorporated that a little bit into Brandy as kind of fan fiction, but not really, because it's a totally different world. But I really enjoyed writing her, and I enjoyed her as well as the grandparents.
Awesome. So that means that in the movie adaptation, you would want Gabrielle Union to play Brandy. What would be some of your other dream casting choices?
Yes, definitely Gabrielle Union. So if anyone knows her or she's watching this, please connect with me. I would love that. Daniel Thompson, I've envisioned Michael B. Jordan as Daniel Thompson. He has those dimples and that charisma and just everything. And Preeti, I really haven't thought much about her. I have had readers reach out and say that, and I don't remember the name of the actress, but she's on the Netflix show Shadow and Bone. She's an Indian character or Indian actress who's on that show, and so I could see her as well.
What's the last romance novel that you read?
Beach Read by Emily Henry. I'm a little bit behind on my TBR.
Okay, no, that's fine. No judgment. What are you currently reading?
I am really into webtoons, and my favorite webtoon is Lore Olympus. So it is actually coming out in graphic novel. So that's what I'm currently reading.
Okay, very good. Which romance novel are you looking forward to reading?
I am definitely looking forward to reading Emily Henry's next book. I think it's called The People We Meet on Vacation.
Yes. Are you a pantser or a plotter?
Most of the time, I'm definitely a pantser. I plot if I'm writing something intricately woven into a world like the fantasy that I worked on. Otherwise, I just need to write to figure out the details and the plots and the arcs and things like that.
When does inspiration strike?
Inspiration typically has struck when I'm on deadline for something else.
Oh, wow.
that needs to be done like that week or in a couple of weeks. And just at the most random times.
Okay. Which Marvel comic book character's love story would you like to write?
It has always been in the past Gambit and Rogue, because they have, they really should be together, but there's a lot of things physically and historically that keeps them apart.
What is your favorite reading snack?
Okay, I am really into goat cheese, and I love to have like the entire little bar or whatever you call it of goat cheese coming out of the package, and like rosemary olive oil crackers. And so that's something that will last a long time, like even all day. So because it doesn't have to be cold, and it's okay if it gets a little room temperature. Actually, you want it a bit softer, and you can just like nibble on it all day. And it's so filling that I don't have to eat anything else. Like I'm just not hungry, so that's a great snack. That's
really very sophisticated. I imagine that like you sometimes take out maybe a charcuterie board.
I do. I mean, in The Trouble with Hating You, that was one of the things that Leah loved to do, was to have cheese boards, and I love cheese boards. Sometimes if I don't want to cook dinner, that's what we're having. Because I'll tell you right now, in my fridge, I have 8 types of cheeses.
I thought that was a little kitty, but that's a dog. Oh my God.
Want to say hi?
Oh.
He's sleeping. He likes to sit right here when I have panels, because he gets very anxious when I have like my setup and everything. So.
Oh, okay. And what is his name?
Gambit. And I have another one named Rogue.
Of course.
She's hiding somewhere.
Well, Sajni, thank you again for joining me here on Reader Seeks Romance. It was wonderful to get to know you better.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great.